Thank you very much for the invitation. I have with me a very distinguished list of panelists, as introduced by the MC. So let me start with the ladies first. Right? I mean, today's world, we're living in a very, very difficult world. We have all kinds of changes in technologies and a lot of trends are happening now affect us. But let me start off with inviting the ladies first. Ms. Chong, who's a former CEO of IBM Malaysia. She's currently the director of Bursa Malaysia. Please.
Yeah, good, well, is it still? Yeah, good morning. We are just 10 minutes to morning, to afternoon. Good morning, and thank you for the introduction. And also, thank you to KSI for inviting me to this session today. When I saw the topic on empowering, so I saw a topic on what's the topic? Okay, leadership for the new era. What was interesting was that it was entrepreneurial and business leadership. So I was kind of wondering, are we talking corporate? Or are we talking startups? I couldn't quite decide. And I came to the conclusion that maybe it is how do you behave like a startup even if you are a corporation. So I came to that conclusion. So what I'm going to speak about is really about how organizations need to evolve to be able to have the entrepreneurial mindset even if you are a large corporation. Okay, so that's where I think my focus is going to be. Now I think as Stephen mentioned, the last couple of years were unprecedentedly multi-years and changing. And the thing is that people will say that digitalization has come to the forefront because of the pandemic. I would challenge that because digitalization happened probably a decade or 15 years before pandemic, right? And if you can recall, names like Uber, Airbnb, Netflix, all of those happened more than 10 years ago. So it is not the pandemic driving digitalization, but rather the pandemic accelerating digitalization. And we begin to see the benefit during pandemic because why? We are not able to engage physically, and as a result, digital became the only alternative. And the way we live, the way we work, the way we learn, the way we buy, changed completely in the last 3 years. So where we are today really is, what's next? So the pandemic is over. Are we able to change to be where we were before the pandemic? I don't think so. Most importantly is to understand that the market, the new market and the market of future will evolve around millennials and Gen Z. In general, globally and maybe even in Malaysia, Gen Z has actually overtaken baby boomers in the workplace, in the workforce. Globally, Gen Z and millennials are more than 50% of the workforce. So when we think about this future generation who is going to shape the industry and shape companies, we got to think about what excites them. They are the talent of the future. They are the workforce of the future. And I will say this, 93% of Gen Zs have indicated that they prefer a flexible work arrangement. They want to work from home. I mean, Gen Z aside, I like to work from home because I've enjoyed the benefit of working from home. Now, of course, Gen Z has other agendas. They will say, it saves me money. I don't have to pay for transportation. Oh, by the way, it helps the earth because, no carbon emission. I'm not using any, car or even the public transport. So against that backdrop, we really need to think about who the future purchasers are, who are going to make purchasing decisions, who are the talents of the future, who are we are going to depend on to be driving the economy and the business in the future. And if these are the people that are going to drive our future, the question is, what kind of leadership do we need? Today, the leadership that we have was founded on a traditional process, systems, profit, very structured approach to business. The Gen Zs, the millennials, and leaders of the future, they will be asking about impact. Does this company make an impact to the country? Does it make an impact? What's it going to do to the future? Our future, we have another 50, 60 years to go. They are going to ask questions about impact, not about profit. They're going to ask questions about flexibility, so how flexible are you as an organization? Do I want to work for you? And by the way, against that, we are talking about the culture of innovation. They are adaptable, they are agile, and they want to have the freedom and the empowering environment for them to be able to think outside the box. And if you really think about the Uber, the Netflix, of the world, they are bold. These are bold ideas. And the new generation are going to be bold talents and bold leaders. Do we have leaders that can motivate and encourage them? Questions to ask, our hierarchical model of management going to be motivating for them? Do they prefer to be self-empowered, self-leading versus being led? There are many questions that come to mind when we talk about what kind of leaders do we need for the new era. Now, I have a lot more, but I'm going to leave that for Q&A and pass the floor back to Stephen.
Thank you, Ms. Chong, for sharing about the new era leadership for the future. I was wondering whether IBM today, is it this kind of structure? Is it still like planning for a CEO for the next 3 years? I watched her YouTube last night video 1 hour before I sleep. So I know her better, about her life story about IBM. She's preparing the CEO to come aboard in 5 years' time, right? So I wonder whether or not, later you think about, ask a question, whether or not really today IBM, is it still the same hierarchical, or is it, as you described, they have all kinds of flexible work arrangement, Because what we wish and what is happening today in Malaysia is quite different still, right?
Exactly,
Yeah,
correct,
yeah.
very correct.
So my next speaker on my right is my good friend, Tan Sri Rainer, one of the few foreigners who got the Tan Sri Award in Malaysia. He has lived in Malaysia longer than me, I think, maybe 50 years, right? And I spent 5 days with him in China together. We went to visit Huawei with the CTO of Huawei and the president of Huawei, hosting him, and I was the beneficiary of the visit. So with so much experience in Siemens, Malaysia, he was CEO in Malaysia Siemens, and maybe you can share with us your perspective about the new leadership for this new era.
Thank you, Stephen, for the nice introduction. As you may know, I'm not homegrown here, but second homegrown. So my nature of doing business is manufacturing, industrial manufacturing, my major background in practice. So now it's about entrepreneurial and business leadership for a new era. But what does new era mean? I produced some slides because a picture tells you more than 1,000 words. So you can take certain pictures in your memories home. That's my hope. So the fourth industrial revolution started in 2011. Its main core element was, and still is, Industry 4.0, the core growth engine of any manufacturing industry. A convergence between IT, mobility, and automation. So these three different worlds integrated and converged into one new world. It started again 2011. The new global order was, in those days, to transform business into a new online data-driven business model. As a jargon in the industry, we call it platform industry. But a lot of changes happened. The president of Klaus Schwab, founder of the World Economic Forum, and that's the only gremium in the world where I believe another industrial revolution can be announced. It's about change. We are at the threshold of a radical systemic change that requires human beings to adapt continuously. As a result, they may witness an increasing degree of polarization in the world, marked by those who embrace change versus those who resist it. Change. Change, you need to be your best friend. Then you're at the forefront of the industry, at the forefront of any business. In the past history, very past history, expert calling manufacturing 2023 landscape a triple squeeze on performance. Number one, looming economic hardship. compressing their bottom line. Number two, a competitive market more than ever before for a skilled workforce. And anytime unexpected disruption to supply chains and the whole value chain. In this world, production efficiency is not the main goal for manufacturers anymore, it's resilience. The need to pivot and adapt to changes in demand has never been greater. This way, we are forecasting for 23 and 24 to be the tipping point for digital manufacturing. With this triple squeeze on top of every command mind, they are looking to build an agile, connected, and composable technology architecture that will help them to increase productivity, boost your ROI, and stay resilient in the face of the unknown. Global headwinds. Global headwinds, we are in Malaysia. We can feel good as long as we withstand global headwinds. So the resilience is the answer to the question, what to build up to as an opportunity to join economical development around the globe. If I state clearly, each business is global. You may not believe it. But if you don't go global, others will do it for you. So the main focus is on customers, on potential customers to grow, and competitors. So competitors waiting for your mistakes. You can only avoid mistakes by going data, data, data. So I give you a chance to elaborate on the way it's being done in business, like in M&A business, merger acquisitions, over the past many years. How did the world change? In the beginning, in the 1990-2000, you see, the big ones took over the small ones. This area is over. The fast ones took over the slow ones, no matter of size, so it happened. But nowadays, the quick learners take over the learners, up to date. Whenever you're up to date, you are strong. If you don't learn, you automatically decided not to be competitive anymore. So the matter of change is my main address today. Change can escalate business, can close the gap of talents and business, and improve will help to stay on, but growth. So what does it mean? As long as you change. So it started in 2011. By innovative growth, you will escalate above the local, the regional, and the global trend. Change is the driving force for your economy and for your business. If you make the traditional way of doing business, improve, based on the Kaizen phenomena, you improve, but the gradient of development is flat, relatively flat, and you will not be competitive anymore after a certain while. So, are you a part of the digital divide, and what is your choice? What is your choice? The change philosophy or the improvement philosophy? You have to make a decision. Not too late, please. Leadership, and this one is now a thing where I would like you to ask to read this carefully. Do you have the organizational structure in place to be world-class at executing, but also at churning out new growth engine in parallel? On the one hand, your execution engine will need to be world-class and at managing factories and tolerating zero failure. And on the other hand, your innovation engine will need to be world-class at experimenting, failing, and learning to shape new ideas. It's a parallel management challenge. I give you 10 seconds to read this again carefully. So, leadership means ownership. Not ownership for yourself, ownership for the whole organization along the whole value chain. Teams of today and tomorrow have to take ownership of what they are doing. And what does it mean? We turn industries into platform industries on a digitalization type of platform. That is the way of thinking and doing and acting. It's like managing an app. How can you manage your own life without app? It's impossible, but an app is a minimal-sized, horizontally integrated management tool. Connect to many things in the world automatically. You don't see it, you can feel it, but you see the result once you manage an app properly. So manage your business the way you manage apps on a larger scale. So leaders of the future have to manage 3 systems. The market. Market means customers to be kept, potential customers to grow your business, and competitors you need to fight. You need to understand what they are doing, otherwise how to fight competitors in order to grow to drive your growth engine. So people in your organization, in the current world, in the future world, vertical organizations have difficulties to manage horizontally integrated platforms. That's an extra topic. We need to search for agility in your organization, and not many people like it. Most people in the middle management don't like people under them who make their own decisions. So I have to think about it. And the organization as such is not a hierarchical mammoth anymore. Take off certain levels of your organization, make it flatter, more agile, and better performing. So now the human system. On the left side, we need to manage the culture of your environment you are immediately in. You have teams working for you, and then skills. Skill development is all about continuous learning programs can help you to be competitive. On the right side, I mirrored another thing. Of course, the IQ of your people has to be good, reasonably good. The PQ means the practical part, the hands-on part has to be better. Because if you turn learnings into realities, you have to be very good in practice. You need to understand what in practice it means. But the EQ, the emotional component, the emotional competence need to be unbeatable. That's the passion of an organization. That's the passion with the people who go the extra mile. You need to do that. And the particular thing is here, you can do everything by using AI, but the EQ can never be replaced by AI because it's an emotional element inside your whole system. Go the extra mile. Ask any intelligence tool, like GPT, you'll never get a passionate answer from them. Therefore, I'm with Jack Ma, who says you need the right people with you, not the best people. So you have to form an organization which fits into this kind of scope. I like Albert Einstein because he made a very important long-term, maybe everlasting statement. I have no special talents. I'm just passionately curious. The most high IQ man in the world, just to be curious because he wants to learn. And he asked so many questions that he learned in addition, lifelong learning. He was a generator of lifelong learning in the world. Never stop learning. If you stop learning, you may die. Professionally, hopefully not. Right? So it's a brutal statement, but it's how it is. So, what to change? What to improve? You need to make data your best friend. So now you see how agility counts in comparison to historical cultures. So silo mentality has to be replaced by horizontal integration mentality. People who see the big picture first. The lack of agility means you need to replace it by data inclusivity. Never make any decision without check data first. Question is, are the data available for the decision-making process? Big question mark. If not, you need to make them available. We are in the digitalization era. Digitalization is all about data, data, data. So the attachment, many people feel, oh, it has been done so many years, it was well done for so many decades, why to change? So if the attachment to the status quo is so strong, it's a barrier, an obstacle for any type of innovation. So therefore, the innovation paralysis has to be taken away by digitalization. Digitalization from A to Z, meaning to reform and to transform into a new business model. I give you one example. Taxis, 10 years ago, very expensive, hard to get. Replaced by Grab, cheap price. So I need to pay to KL Central maybe 25 ringgit for a taxi. Grab costs only 4 ringgit 50. So after tax is gone, Grab costs 25 ringgit now. So that is the business model of the future. You need to understand. Grab the idea, please. So four components for agility which you need to take home. You need to know your people at the best. Who are they? What can they do? And what is their potential? And if you know what the people can do, delegate power as much as you can to them. You don't lose power, but you delegate power. You make your whole organization more powerful. Yourself, no matter in which position you are, you need to be an expert in what you are doing. What does it mean? Expertise has a very short expiry date. It lasts not very long. You need to learn, learn, learn. So in large organizations, top management need to learn minimum 3 to 4 weeks a year. Otherwise, no future. If you don't learn systematically, no future. Learn from every experience, whether successful or not. If there is a failure, most welcome. You learn from your own failures the most you can. Don't hesitate, but don't forget to learn. Otherwise, you make the same mistake again. Never stop learning. Daily learning, your best friend. That's what I'm trying to say. Learning by doing, learning, lifelong learning. That is the motto of your survival in any type of business. So this is a very confusing, very busy slide. But I want you to understand how to manage your organization in terms of lifelong learning. The key benefit is what? Please focus on the center point, the learning culture. People need to embrace into this learning culture. Pride in being a part of something bigger than yourself. Such team is going to be unbeatable. Again, pride in being a part of something bigger than yourself. Take it home, please. That's a challenge to manage siloism and turn into digitalization culture. So how to make change successfully happen? Please follow this text. To start the journey of becoming the next version of yourself, ask 3 deceptively simple questions. Who are we today? Who will we become tomorrow? How do we start making the change? Remember that the biggest risk is not the action you take. It is trying fruitlessly to cling to the status quo as the world is changing around you. Ladies and gentlemen, please take this home. Read it carefully, 10 seconds long. Take it home.
Tan Sri, you have more slides? Do you have more slides than this?
So now, what is the secret of Siemens' success? A statement made by Dr. Roland Busch in March this year. as I explained to our shareholders yesterday, it's putting customers first. For 175 years, listening to them, making their challenge our challenges. Today, we are serving them with technologies that combine the real and the digital worlds, so that our customers can transform their industries and become more competitive, resilient, and sustainable. And by doing that, we are helping them to transform them every day for billions of people. That's what motivates our teams. Customers first. So now it's about intelligence. There are three guiding questions. We all know what we know, but we don't know what we don't know. How do we know what we don't know? Make use of AI to a large degree, all right? Data, data, data. Make data your best friends. So therefore, my final statement is, that's a lovely statement, isn't it? Take it home. Never stop learning, because life never stops teaching. Every single day, every single moment. And hope this conference will also contribute to it. So success, ladies and gentlemen, is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. So you can climb mountains you never expected to happen. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Tan Sri Rainer, for the lecture today on the future. Okay, I've given Tan Sri more time. He's a professor at the university in Singapore for a number of years. So then my next speaker is on my rightmost, the famous Datuk Sri Iqbal. I know him for 3 years now, but I don't know him very well. Maybe you can share with us some of the backgrounds, and he's a KSI Deputy Chairman. Okay, Datuk Sri, the floor is yours.
All right, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, and a very good morning to all of you. Chairman Stephen Lai and my fellow panelists and distinguished members who are present here for this summit. I'm very privileged to be on the panel. Usually they ask me to be a moderator. I do not know why they chose me this time to be a panelist. Perhaps sometimes a change is necessary, as what Tan Sri Rainer has said. So they are changing my portfolio. Now I'll try to make it 3 points. First is we are looking at entrepreneurial and business leaders for a new era. I'll just briefly touch on entrepreneurship, what it is, and how it is evolving into the business domain and providing leadership in business. Tan Sri Rainer has already given you comprehensive, akin to a mini MBA presentation. I think we should take that and hold it in our portfolio and revisit every day. And Chong, Chye, she did bring out the experience of what is organizations evolve and become entrepreneurial. So that has got an important relevance to what I'm going to say. Entrepreneurship will lead to some kind of leadership, business leadership, and within that, an entrepreneurial management process also is included in that. Who are these entrepreneurs? Those classical people you know when you go back to the basic economics. Entrepreneur is a French word, if I'm not mistaken, meaning an undertaker. And in classical terms, an undertaker is a person who takes and put you down 6 feet down, entrepreneur. But that's not the entrepreneur we are talking about. It's somebody who has got the ability and the readiness to take on the responsibility to start a business and then develop organize and run the business or an enterprise, you might say, for a profit. The profit element must be inherent in there, and in so doing, he is taking what is known as the risk factor. And that distinguishes the ordinary people from that of an entrepreneur. Not everybody can become an entrepreneur. But today you will find that this entrepreneur from the classical side, when factors of productions were only land, labor, and capital, entrepreneurship became the fourth component and recognized as an important part in economic or business development. Without the entrepreneur, you cannot take on the challenges in front. But now, over decades and century after, you have a lot of modifications. So now you don't have only the entrepreneur. You have a technopreneur. You have an agropreneur. You have an intrapreneur. All these are modifications and innovations that we have come about, and you have got micropreneurs, people who run micro enterprises who have turned and become not an enterprise, but an activity which is akin to this. That's my first point. The second point that I want to make is that why do people become entrepreneurs? If I may pause for a while, 1974, it's almost 50 years ago, we formed what was known as the National Entrepreneurial Research and Development Association, NERDA. When you talk to the Malaysian at large, entrepreneurship, they say this is somebody who has come from far away. So we try to look at examples of what happened in other parts of the world. For example, I think Ms. Chong, you come from an IBM American background. The Appalachian Mountains had got the indigenous people, and the Americans were trying to bring them into the mainstream economic, and they say, we must teach them how to be an entrepreneur. That becomes a question. Entrepreneurs are born or can be made. We don't want to go into that kind of a debate, but we recognize that entrepreneurs can be motivated. So the second point that I'm trying to bring in is what is there in the person? The person must be having the sort of a motivation and drive to say that I have a goal, I will take up the challenge and become an entrepreneur. Now, sometimes you'll find that the person is interested, but the language in which he is using is always bringing down because it is a risk-averse mental attitude in the language. Many examples you'll find that Malaysia is a cosmopolitan country. We don't want to go into the political debate, this Malaysia belongs to one group and not to all groups and so on. We don't want to get into that. But if you look at, Chong, your background, a Chinese background, you will find that the language and use encourages the people to get and take on a risk attitude. In some other I don't want to talk about another group, but from an Islamic perspective, some people will say, your focus is on the life hereafter, don't worry, God will take care of you. So you just have enough for sustenance, that is good enough. No motivations to go for. Yet you'll find that the people in Kelantan and other areas, because of the nuances, they are able to thrive. And they always say, the Kelantanese control the government, The Kelantanese control the business, the Kelantanese control the banking and all that. You know, these are characteristics that has come even within a given society. So you find that the next one is family. Is the parents propelling the children, take on. No, you study. You go to school, take an employment. You must become a government servant. That is the mentality that they would have. Family determines the culture. Sometimes you'll find that the transaction model, the money transactions, value of money, acquiring wealth, managing the wealth, distributing the wealth, all this and part and parcel of culture. And of course, language plays an important in the nation, some philosophy and the other things that take place. So all these drive this entrepreneurship in whatever category. So the third one is in this world, changing world, and of course, Seri Rayner attributed a statement to Albert Einstein. It is the passionate curiosity that drives you to take up the challenges. And we will say, curiosity kills the cat. So you cannot overdo on the curiosity, but without curiosity, without a mind for change and innovation, you cannot thrive. And this is the third point. That today you'll find that most of the business leaders are very rarely the entrepreneurs who have created the enterprise. We study the examples. Good examples come from Germany. Good examples come from Switzerland. Good examples come from Japan, Korea, and so on. You'll find that the owners over time progressively diminish their role and hold only their wealth or what we say, their equity in the firms. But the management and leadership is provided by completely different kind of people who have got the right talents. I think this is what Seri Rayner, you mentioned, is the right people, not the clever people or that kind of a thing. So the transformation is changing on the leadership, and this transformational behavior, entrepreneurial in nature, but entrepreneurship in the total ownership of the firm or the organization, that leads to collaborative effort. And earlier in the first panel, you talk about these mergers and acquisitions. Always this power syndrome, I want to own the biggest and the largest and the more controlling, whether it is in the political power syndrome or in the business power syndrome. The capitalist mentality overdrives the entrepreneurial spirit. There should be, as what was said in the first panel, checks and balances. I will just leave you with one small story for you to take back. It will sum up what I have said. Here is a man who owns a plot of land and a good agricultural tract. He was producing a lot of fruits, a lot of vegetables, and the road came by the way. He put up his signboard, 1 ringgit per barrel or 10 ringgit per basket. He was thriving, very well patronized everybody. I think we still find this along, but not on the north-south or on the expressway, but on the main roads you still find that. He got good money. He sent his son to the university, a good university, and then the son came back. I'm not making a fun of what Seri Rayner said about data-driven. So he said, Dad, the economy is not doing very well. The growth is now stagnant. And then the World Bank is saying this and so on, and our own, what do you call, interest rate structures and all that. He brought in the economic principles, and he said that we must protect ourselves and do ourselves very careful. So the father said, you are very well educated, and therefore I must listen to you. So he started putting up his placards. Come, buy my vegetables, come, buy my fruits, come, my whatever that he had, you know. And sure enough, the business was going down and down. And the father said, son, you are right after all. Now, that is not what we want. The son who came back took on the father's business and took on the challenges. He acquired the next neighboring land and became an agropreneur and started modifying his products into marketable packaging and established the supply chain to the markets where the goods are required. And instead of the father owning just a piece of land and a farm, the son became a conglomerate in the agricultural sector. And that is the story that we want in the transformation on the entrepreneurship into a business leader. With that thought, thank you very much for listening to me.
Okay, thank you, Datuk Seri Iqbal, for doing a very good job, in summarizing the points and then giving new points as well, right? My next speaker is George Shimel, right? Someone that I know for the last 3 years. He calls me a Penang Mafia, but I'm not a mafia. I'm a very nice person. I spent 30 years in Singapore. I worked for MNC before. I also worked for as an entrepreneur, right? I always feel very uneasy working for MNC. That's why I quit my job at the peak of my career, because I always wondering why I wanted. And I became entrepreneurs before it was fashionable. Because in Singapore, you can be a millionaire, just be a professional, right? Everybody can be a millionaire. Why bother, right? But today, I see entrepreneurs everywhere want to be entrepreneurs. You got VC funding. But I became an entrepreneur before it was fashionable, right? And I was telling Ms. Chong that I worked for the first Singaporean to run IBM Singapore, the first local to run MNC in Singapore, right? But I joined only after he left IBM, not because he was IBM. He hired me, right? I joined him after IBM. So I worked with him to join on sales calls, to banks, right? He's a very good presenter. The way he communicates, fantastic, first-class communicator, right? But as an entrepreneur, it's a very different world. That's why I feel such a affinity with my friend George, right? He's an entrepreneur, and I told him that the first time I heard about his company, iProperty, was my ex-partner. My ex-partner was a Singapore Entrepreneur of the Year, right? We were together, and he was telling me that he's not happy because he was the first company in Singapore that got $100 million US valuation from the VC, from first-year VC from USA, and he was at the top. And then later on, when George's company was announced by VC, it was worth much more than $100 million US. He said, now I became number 2. And now I met this person, the CEO that sold the company, right? And catch a very high valuation. So I think it's important to have good leadership, business leadership. I think I'm going to ask George to share about the other aspect of entrepreneurial leadership, the real life person. George, yeah, please.
So good morning, and thank you also for having me, and thank you, Tantri, Mike Leo, for organizing this event. I will focus a bit more on the entrepreneurial, less on the economy part today. I'm very, very sorry what I did to your friend, but I'm not really sorry. I'm also not homegrown in Malaysia, as you can see, and I'm also from, funny enough, Germany, but I'm married to a local, and I'm here to stay for good, because why? And that's the first thing. If you're an entrepreneur, you want to be in a market which is really, really attractive, and ASEAN and Malaysia is, for me personally, the center of ASEAN is a very, very attractive place to do business in, and has a large population, young population, and is very positive towards digital, embraces digital as a way of enabling things. So from my perspective, what are really the success factors for a multipolar business world for entrepreneurs. It's the focus on the problem solving. That is the number one thing. Often in a very much US influenced capital market, the focus is very much on the latest technology or on certain buzz themes like ESG and so on and so forth, which are repackaged themes which had been there before. And people get rewarded for doing something which ticks certain boxes rather than for solving problems. Obviously, that is not sustainable. Generative AI is an exception. We will talk a bit about it at the later stage, but don't start a business just because you think you're one of millions of now emerging Gen AI experts and you want to create a unicorn. Never ever has it been successful where somebody wakes up and says, I want to be a unicorn or I want to be a billionaire. No, you want to change the world, you want to make things better, solve problems in the real world, whether it is what Grab has been doing, making the whole logistics far more transparent. Even for me, meters suddenly get switched on. Biggest issue was for me in Texas, in Malaysia, there was always a big debate if they wanted to switch on the meters. So what is this whole disruption really about? As I said, solving problems, and this is solving problems for others, for the society, it is for the government, it's for the greater good. And I think there is a great focus and responsibilities of leaders to guide people through a lot of challenges, because with deepfake messages being posted on the web and so on, technology has become a bit of a threat. Actually, it is a very big threat from my perspective, and it should not be underestimated. Let's start with the more positive, the constructive side around Gen AI. If you're going to invest or implement Gen AI technologies like ChatGPT and so on and so forth, many people think it's very much all about switching on this new technology, but the big thing happens actually on the cultural, on the people side. 70% of all the efforts related to successfully implementing, like in a larger scale, a ChatGPT type of product or project is on the people side. That is not from me, that's from BCGX in combination with MDEC and was just announced. So how can the government help us now? Like, what can government or other people do to foster an entrepreneurial culture? Actually, personally, I don't think it's about tax breaks. I don't think it's about technology infrastructure, because that is very good already. It's not about workspace, it's to a certain extent about talents, but there's a lot of talents in the markets already. It's not about creating a better market, but what it is about is we are lacking a strong VC culture in the country, meaning for the first phase of the growth. We have a lot of PE firms, but on the VC side, we are very poor from my perspective. Number two is we are starting more and more promoting companies, for example, with MDEC and the Fox program or other things. This is really important, that the government stands behind companies and new ideas to grow it, and a slight relaxation of overseas people. And you will say, surprise, he's saying, let's get more foreigners in. Now, what I'm saying is a few more talent to be let in for these growth companies, because I can tell you, since I've come, I've hired about 400 people. So it's not that somebody will lose a job if a foreigner comes in. The third thing is how to nurture and young entrepreneurs and emerging business leaders. Support them at the early stage. It's about education, as Tanshri Raina has said. It's about universities. In the universities, there's a university I do some work with, which is the Asia Pacific University, for example. There's 17,000 students. 70% of those are studying computer science. Let me talk about two major trends or two major opportunities for growth. One is this ChatGPT. Why am I so obsessed about it? Because I do believe it should not be underestimated. People always have certain assumption about what it can and can't do. There's people running around saying it doesn't show empathy, it's not as creative as humans, therefore it's not really a threat. That has already been proven wrong. There's studies which clearly show that a ChatGPT in a medical environment actually shows more emotions and is more effective than a human. When it comes to the creativity, again, ChatGPT actually outcreates people. What ChatGPT can't do is understand context. Now, all of you who are in relationships know sometimes the spoken word of your partner is not what the partner really wants to say. Sometimes your partner says something and means the opposite. That's where ChatGPT struggles to understand, because ChatGPT takes it more at face value. But make no mistake, ChatGPT will learn, and the computing power of the generative AI will go up. I don't know how many of you have heard about quantum computing. Quantum computing is very easily explained. This is an oversimplification. Think about going out in the evening and let's say the lady is searching what to wear. And this can be sometimes quite a stressful or exhausting experience when all these different dresses are being sequentially put on and the time is running out. The way quantum computing works is you try out all things at the same time and look at the result, and then you pick what gets the highest score. What does that mean? Computing problems which take billions of years can be resolved in few seconds. If you put this into an artificial intelligence machine, there is no way we as humans can think faster than this. And this is a major, major risk. Therefore, governments need to stay on top of it and funnel this technology in the right direction. We've heard about climate change, we heard about other things. Actually, the latest studies predict that our biggest threat is generative AI. This is not like some, conspiracy theorists or anyone saying, but there are people who say with a 25% probability in the next 100 years, generative AI will wipe us out. There's others who say a 1% idea. Now you might go out, it's a bit like me saying we will all die of cardiovascular diseases, and then you walk outside this hotel and get run over by a car and complain to me that I told you it would be cardiovascular. But what I'm trying to tell you is, doesn't mean we should stop worrying about climate change and other things, but we need to focus on this single point very, very much. The other topic, and it sounds a bit random what I'm talking about today, is ESG. We've talked about ESG earlier. First of all, it's not really, really new, but it is very, very important, and it is not a burden. Sometimes people say, oh, we have to do this, and have a negative connotation. Actually, for small, medium-sized companies, ESG is good. If you are focused on E, if you're committed to reducing your footprint for the environment, you find it much easier to attract staff. If you're focused on the S, the social, like being a socially responsible business, the same thing applies. If you implement strict governance regulations within your company, you find it easier to get investors, you lower the risk of your company suddenly going out of business, and so on and so forth. So, long story short, I've given you probably a rundown on pretty much everything which is in the media right now, but in a nutshell, we are in the right market for the entrepreneurs. We need to work together between the government, the industry, and also the educational system. There's a couple of big trends which are out there. Don't just go after the trend, really think through if the trend solves a problem, and be very aware of the dangers and the opportunities of generative AI. One of the previous speakers also mentioned real estate in Malaysia, and obviously, coming also from a real estate background, I want to briefly mention and re-emphasize. Malaysian real estate is the cheapest real estate on an affordability point of view in ASEAN and probably one in the world. Over there you have the institute, the Malaysian Institute of Estate Agents. Over there, they're all happy to take your orders now, and with these words I finish. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. All these Germans who are now living in Malaysia chose now to live in Malaysia. I was so impressed that I finally come home to Malaysia after 30 years away from Malaysia. So make the right choice. I'd like to pose the first question to Ms. Chong, right? You know, when I was growing up, 25 years ago, IBM was my dream company, but I didn't join IBM, right? But of course, IBM has gone through a tough time. They got a new CEO that transformed the company, right? And now I look at the share price today, right? Today, the share value of IBM and Siemens is almost the same, $130 billion US dollar, right? And of course, compared to their previous startup companies like Microsoft and Apple, right, it's 25 times bigger than IBM. But IBM has done very well. The PE is still 68 PE. So apparently, IBM has managed to transform themselves to a software company, right? To do more cloud computing, AI, big data. Maybe you can share with us what is today's IBM currently, right? Can you attract the same people that you can attract like in the past? The best people join IBM, or how do you transform the IBM today to make it more attractive? Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Well, I didn't prepare for the question that Stephen asked me, but I will try my best. IBM is a 112-year-old company. Okay, and we compare to the names, some of the names that you mentioned. For example, Google, probably about, I remember Google, there was one conference I attended, and they put the Google guy beside me, and they said that we want to hear from this 100-over-year-old company, and also this young company, about 15-year-old at that time. So I was a bit intimidated because it's like, okay, what can I say that's going to make any impact or, create any interest? You have Google sitting beside you, So then, very interestingly, the Google guy said that, I want to learn from IBM. What he said was that we are 15-year-old, and we have actually grown, and we have grown without quite knowing why we are growing. So we are in the right time, we are there at the right time, right technology, and right market, and we grew. So if you ask me, how did you grow? Why did you grow, and what's your plan for the next 15 years? I don't know. So he said that, I look at IBM and I say, you're 100, and at that time you were 100 and maybe not 112, but probably 105 or something. He says, you're 105-year-old, and I wonder whether we will ever get there. Google, will I ever be 105-year-old? So this is where, I'm trying to answer the question in a roundabout way. IBM is 112 years old, and I think IBM survived when our peers, okay, Google is not our peer, right? All our peers are gone. For those of you who lived in my era, we had a choice of joining digital. Well, HP is still there in a different shape and form, but like digital, for example, Honeywell, you name, a lot of them are gone. So the point is that companies will grow old, even if they are young now. So the question now, when you talk about reinvention, innovation, changing their shape and form and all that, how can a company survive and continue to thrive? Now, IBM is not where I think IBM could have been. Yesterday, I attended a conference, and this guy who was the speaker at the conference, he was actually advisor to Jack Welch and quite a lot of big names and big companies. And he said to the crowd, he says, name me one company that had more missed opportunities than any other in the world. And he said it was IBM. And I totally agree with him because we had so many missed opportunities. Now, the point is IBM is still around, despite that. So the question really is, what is it that has allowed IBM to continue surviving? Won't say thriving, surviving. And I think one of the key things is innovation. Right? May not be clear to a lot of people because the innovation IBM has, I would say, is very much not so sexy, not front end. A lot of core systems, a lot of back end. Now we talk about quantum computing. One of the areas IBM has invested in, and this is my prediction, no connection to what IBM thinks, that quantum computing could be the next era for IBM. Because IBM has got such they were ahead in inventing that. Now, AI was a missed opportunity for IBM. Honestly, IBM was one of the first to come out to talk about AI. But we were talking about very mundane stuff. And everyone is talking about the sexy stuff. Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, it is about innovation. And I think that IBM continues to survive, not thrive, but could thrive with the right, we have the right technology. We thought we were good marketers, but somehow maybe we don't have the right leaders. Maybe that's it. We don't have the entrepreneurial leaders.
Yeah. I think today there are 20 Indians in the world control the companies in the world. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing that all these companies, all these people, they left India, went to America, and now 20 Indians basically control the IBM CEO is an Indian. I mean, I'm just saying that really, by observation, that the right leader, right, like Microsoft, for example, right, they did a culture renovation, right? My friend worked for Microsoft for many years. His stock option is worthless. Then he left Microsoft. Then suddenly this guy came in CEO, and he missed opportunity. All the other guys, they join later. They become multi-millionaire, right? So in the right time, right place, you join the right company, right? I think for Siemens is 175-year-old company, right? Siemens old company, and Siemens Penang is a software center, and I went to visit them, right? And they launched in Penang. Siemens software business is higher margin than all the businesses in Siemens, I was told, because software is such a high margin, right? So Siemens also trying to reinvent themselves. Right, so currently, is Siemens going to be survive for the next 100 years?
Only 100 years?
Okay.
Thank you, Stephen. First of all, Siemens was born in 1847. Quite an old company, but still young. And you notice the statement of Dr. Roland Busch, he is a good friend of Malaysia. He traveled many times, so he ran a Siemens automotive component factory in Siemens VDO in Penang. So other industries as well. So in my times, we invested about $5.4 billion into new manufacturing or improved manufacturing plants in the region here, Penang, Malacca, and so on. So because Malaysia is a very innovative country, and what I tried to address before is very important. Give the youth more power. You know, the difference between Europe and Malaysia is actually, it's upside down. In Europe, most people are, 60% are old people. Only 30% of younger generation, below 35. Here, the opposite model. 60% of younger than 35 make use of this potential. That's the people that really engage in learning and doing things and potentially making the right decision. So don't hinder them anymore. Don't show resistance because of multi-layer organizations. Let them go. That is my notion to all of you. Let them go. Let them go agile. And let them learn every single day.
Yeah.
Siemens is known in Malaysia. So now in the world as well. I was attending a function where Professor Kishogi Mabubani was the speaker 2 weeks ago in KL. He made a very clear statement. I think that you need to take home. His statement was CIA. I'm not talking about the secret agency in the United States. He means something wisely looking to the future. C stands for China, I stands for India, and A stands for Americas. Sorry, once he's here in Singapore, he says A stands for ASEAN. Sure. So he's a very friendly person, but he's a wise person. And what he's addressing is very clear. Put emphasis on connections to China and don't lose friends in the United States. There's a stretch goal for the Malaysian economy. I'm not in politics. Luckily, I'm not in politics, otherwise I wouldn't be here anymore. So I'm interested in the economy and the people. So that is wisely said, please connect yourself to the right people and learn more from the Chinese than from Americas. So Siemens now, a few days ago, introduced the new industrial metaverse. That's a total breakthrough in the whole world economy. The new industrial metaverse discovers the industrial metaverse where technology and manufacturing converge. So the epicenter of industrial revolution is now in, for which revolution, 4 or 5, I'm not sure. Davos will answer the question in January next year. In Germany, 150 kilometers north of Munich. If you want to travel there, hearty welcome. On the other side, the competence center of modern industries in Shanghai. So that means the tradition between Siemens in Germany and Siemens China is of 150 years this year, 150 years.
Any
You're heartily
question?
welcome to go there.
Any question from the floor? I have 10 minutes left. Otherwise, I'm gonna. Any question from the floor?
Yeah, must have.
Any compelling, burning question you must ask the panelists? Right. You know, I'm gonna ask Datuk Seri, right? Iqbal, he's such a brilliant student, right? If I go to school, must be the top students in the school, able to quickly learn. And then I want to ask you about Malaysian politics. I mean, in terms of controlling the government, right? I mean, in terms of entrepreneurship, there's no barrier. It's a global thing, like the meeting just say, either you go big or you go home, right? In today's world, a lot of rent seekers have been benefiting all these years in Malaysia. We've been making a lot of money without doing very much. But now today's world with the RCEP coming in, right? With all the free trade agreements, free flow of talent, free flow of things. A lot of things are happening around the region, ASEAN as well as in China. How do you think the Malaysian can do this better? I think in Malaysia, I recognize that these two German-born person, right, recognize a lot of talent pool in Malaysian youth, right? Like I spent 30 years in Singapore, right? Singapore produce people who are very clever, above average. But we say in Chinese, right, Singapore produce a lot of 人才, very good talented people. But Malaysia produce a lot of 奇才, people who are very clever, very smart, don't know where somehow it changed the world, right? So I think Malaysia is a melting pot that we produce people who are very, very clever, very smart, can change the world. Maybe you can comment about your experience in Malaysia.
I think you have given me a very tall order within a short span of next, I don't know how many minutes we have. But quickly, we have proof on the panel here. We have two German stalwarts, one for a very long time and one much recently here. Looking very positively at Malaysia, and not only Malaysia, but Malaysia as a sort of a hub for the rest of the ASEAN. For the reasons he mentioned about the CIA, we are very safeguarded between China and India, the global powers, and also the growth centers and the growing economy. Malaysia, we always say, the politicians will say, the economists will say, we have very strong fundamentals, no doubt about it. If you analyze, we have very strong fundamentals in whatever resources, talent, educational institutions, and other institutions, democratic system, and also a very good way of transforming power. Within the last 4 or 5 years, we have seen change of government one after another, very peaceful, no violence, no rumbling. Political rumblings are there, but people went about, you and I went about in a very nice way. So these are positive factors. We have very good policies, but the problem is in the implementation and the delivery systems. And you have got a lot of problems with relation to. Yesterday, when we had our own council meeting of the Economic Club of Kuala Lumpur, we looked at it. Our country produces very good graduates. About 100 over 1,000 graduates, they come out. Tan Sri Raina will say these graduates are not industry ready or their skill sets ready for absorption by the frontier and the new industries that we try to bring into the country. And that is the reason why people like Stephen were brain drained to Singapore, and nearly 300 over 1,000 people are there. We try to get the brain gain here. We are not not at all successful. The brain gain is. But we say we want new talents come out from other parts of the world, maybe even from India or in China. These people come and they get very frustrated because of certain, what you call, tight immigration and other relations and so on. And these people, good brain gain, they are now draining and want to go out. These are the challenges that we have in the country. But hopefully, I think the positive statement that came from the first panel, and Malaysia is still good. The unity government is doing something. And then we had an announcement by the Prime Minister this morning at the Securities Commission on the Madani economic principles, and hopefully we will be able to progress faster and change faster to achieve better living standards in Malaysia.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have 2 minutes left. I'm going to ask all the panelists to give a one-liner. Maybe I'll start with George first. What do you want to tell the audience? Final thoughts.
I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone in the room once had an idea for a new business. So everybody in this room had an entrepreneurial idea. What I would encourage you is actually not to give up too early, because I do believe, and this question was asked earlier, I do believe you actually learn to become an entrepreneur. Yes, confidence and certain things are ingredients which are essential. At a certain stage, confidence in yourself doesn't mean you have to be the world's best speaker or the world's best this or that. Believe in yourself and persist. This is the fundamental thing which will make the difference. Surround yourself, they always say, with intelligent people. Yes, I mean, sometimes it's easier said than done, but most important bit is believe in yourself, do something which you really, really feel passionate about. Do not try with the statement, I want to be a billionaire. Start with the statement, I want to change X or Y or Z. I ran in the other day into someone from BFM radio, and he had interviewed me probably 10 years ago, and he said, you're still around. And I said, yes. At your age, you're still doing entrepreneurship. So the other thing is age does not matter. You can start at 90 plus. Honestly, trust me with it. Go for it.
Maybe you can share one final thought.
One final talk. Okay. What is the best you can take home? It's data, data, data. Don't make any decision before you didn't check your data. So George mentioned before that quantum computing is the most powerful computer in the world now. True. But you need to sense data first. Then you connect data second on high-speed modality, and then you work on the data, computing data. So there's one company in the world we can do both. The most powerful quantum computer is being developed by a Chinese company. Out of one hand, they are involved in 3 angles of this kind of economy. So if you want to learn how to manage business, look east, China. If you learn how to manage business, also look west. United States, maybe Germany as well. Thank you.
One final thought from Ms. Chong.
I guess my only message is that entrepreneurial is not necessarily just startups. You can be an entrepreneur in a corporation. The whole thing is about the mental change of mindset in how you approach challenges. And many organizations today, corporations included, are very keen to have maybe sandboxes or small teams of people generating new ideas. So don't confine yourself to just startups. Wherever you are, you can be an entrepreneur.
Thank you for all the panelists. With that, I'd like to conclude this afternoon's session. I'd like to say that the big data is a very, very important topic today, but don't forget about the small data. Being curious, right? I mean, you small data. That's why I spent 3 weeks in China, talking to officers, talking to the industry people. So I came up with a lot of signals I read from China, right? So you need both the small signal, small data, and the big data. With that, I conclude this panelist discussion. Thank you.